We were continuing through Colossians this week, and this time we were looking at God's instructions for how we should interact in our families. It can be a real challenge because while on one hand our families are typically the ones who love us the most, they can also be the ones who annoy us the most, right? Conflicts pop up, we disagree on things, and sometimes we get frustrated with each other. So we might look for a good example of what a family should be and try to model things after that. Interesting thing though, if you look through the Bible, look at different families, you almost never see stories about good, healthy families. Almost every family that the Bible goes into detail describing, from the beginning of Genesis to the end of the Babylonian exile, has a lot of problems, major issues. We saw that last week with Jehoram and Athaliah, didn't we? As I was thinking about this week, one story in the Bible came to mind. A small, little known book about a seemingly insignificant woman named Ruth. This was a long time ago, a few generations before King David came along. A Jewish couple, Elimelech and Naomi, and their two sons, decide to leave their hometown of Bethlehem during a famine and move to the nearby land of Moab. While they live in Moab, the two sons get married, and things seem to be going pretty well at first. But then tragedy hits. Elimelech dies, leaving his wife a widow. Then things get even worse. Both these sons die, and now Naomi and her two daughters in law are left alone as widows. Naomi, she's a wreck, and decides it's time to go back home to Bethlehem and see if she can at least find food there and not starve. She turns to her daughters in law and tells them to just leave her. Go back to their land of Moab, go back to their friends and families, and try to start life over again. At first, they both say no, they want to go with her, but eventually one of them agrees to go back home. However, the other one insists on staying with her mother in law. Her name was Ruth. Listen to what she says in Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. Ruth has an amazing attitude here. After everything the family has been through, she could have easily gotten bitter and discouraged, maybe blaming her mother-in-law for the way things turned out, or even blaming God. Instead, she doubles down on her commitment to her new family, who at this point is just Naomi. No matter what happens, she made a promise to be a part of this family when she got married, and she's not going to abandon her mother-in-law when she's in need. Family is an important thing. It's where we first learn the notion that we have an obligation to someone other than ourselves. We really need to remember this because we live in a society that increasingly tells us that we should always be putting ourselves first, that our only real obligation is the obligation to make ourselves happy. But as I've said to you guys in the past, one of the things you'll find in life is that it's your responsibilities, your obligations, the people who are depending on you that really give you joy and purpose day by day. Yes, it's tiring. It's difficult. We want to give up sometimes. A child throws a tantrum and a parent gets frustrated. A parent sets a rule you don't like, maybe insists you do some chores around the house, and you get angry because you just want to go outside and play with your friends. But take your family obligations seriously. Submit to one another, and you'll find incredible joy hidden in the work. The story of Ruth is a fascinating one for several reasons. For one, we never actually see God show up anywhere. Not directly, anyway. God doesn't say anything. There aren't any spectacular miracles. No prophets come by to bring an important message. Just people doing their best to do the right thing in difficult circumstances. But it's a tragedy that turns into a love story. As Naomi and Ruth return to Bethlehem, Ruth goes out to see if she can find food for them to eat during the harvest time. Back in those times, rather than having food banks or homeless shelters or government programs, God had given instructions to farmers to leave just a little of their crops behind whenever there was a harvest, so that people who were poor and homeless could come over and pick a little food for themselves. So Ruth finds a field and takes a little for herself and Naomi. The field belongs to a man named Boaz, and he sees Ruth doing this and learns about her story. He is so touched by Ruth's commitment to Naomi that he goes above and beyond to give them as much food as they need. And then the love story starts. Ruth is moved by the generosity of Boaz, and Boaz by the amazing attitude Ruth has during such a difficult time. And then it turns out Boaz is actually the perfect person to help Naomi and Ruth out of the situation they're in and reclaim their old land in Bethlehem from before Elimelech and Naomi left. In the end, Boaz and Ruth get married, and they get their happily ever after ending. Now you might be thinking, wait a second, Bethlehem, isn't that? Yep, that's the town David was born in, the town Jesus was born in. In fact, Boaz and Ruth are their ancestors. Boaz and Ruth are the great grandparents of King David, all because Ruth stayed committed to her family through the tragedy and was willing to go all the way to a new land to support her struggling mother-in-law. What does it mean to submit to one another in our families? What does it mean to honor our father and mother? It means we're willing to sacrifice for their benefit. We're willing to give up some of what we like, some of what we enjoy for their sake. We'll all have our moments of arguing and disagreements, but there is tremendous reward for those who stick through it. So whatever situation you find your family in, look for ways to serve each other. And in the words of Boaz, may the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge.